Hey y'all. So y'all, like God is gonna work it out for you. You know what I keep thinking about is like, which of the, Israelites were like, oh, you know what? We think that God is going to part the Red Sea, and that is how we're going to get away from Pharaoh and his army. Like, I'm sure none of them like thought that, right? And why didn't they think about it? Because it was so it like that miracle was just so beyond anything we were capable of thinking. God can do above anything that we can ask or think, because his ways are beyond what we can't even comprehend his ways. Like, that's how amazing it is. And like, where you find yourself right now is not where you're always going to be. God always works it out. Like, and one thing about that is this, like, the Israelites would never saw that miracle if they didn't flee from Egypt, right? Like, they had to take that step of obedience, of alignment. And when you think a lot of the really big miracles in the Bible, it was obedience, it was alignment, right? For example, the blind man had to go wash in the pool of Siloam, right, to get his sight. Martha had to roll the stone back before Lazarus, basically Jesus raised Lazarus up from death, from being dead, right? Like everything. The lady with the issue of bleeding, she had to reach out and touch Jesus' cloak, right? Like, when you think of all these things, it was obedience, it was alignment. Simon Peter, Jesus said, "Cast your net." Right now, we know Jesus could have just said, "Fish, get on the boat," but he, we have free will, right? So he needs to see that alignment, that obedience with him, and that's like obedience is when like amazing miracles happen. And things sometimes, like, you're like, how is this gonna work, right? But God always, like, he literally always finds a way. And what I want us to do in those seasons is think back to that time before where things seemed impossible. We seemed like we were up against a wall, and God made a path that nobody else could make. Sometimes in our lives, like, situations get so complex, and they have to get so complex before God acts, because we are so smart, y'all. We got all the tools. We know what's going on. That it has to be so complex that when we find a way out, when we find a solution and it works, you know that it wasn't natural, it wasn't you. But to get there, sometimes God has to make situations so complex so that we know for a fact this was him. Many times God is more concerned with us giving him glory, our holiness, than our comfort, right? And that's such a big thing that I've kind of thought a lot about as I just reflect. But the next, like, if you're up against something now, if you're worrying now, just remember that last time you were worrying and it worked out. Like, at the end of the day, like, it always works out, right? All right, y'all. Happy Faith Friday.